He first saw the old man on a Tuesday morning, sitting alone on the cracked concrete bench outside the county shelter, his cane hooked over one wrist and a styrofoam cup steaming between his hands. The old man's jacket was faded green, the kind that had once been a uniform but was now too threadbare to be anything but memory. A patch clung stubbornly to the sleeve, an airborne insignia, sun-bleached almost white. Jake Merson noticed all of that in a glance and filed it away as irrelevant. He was here for a dog. Mr. Mercer. The shelter tech, a young woman in scrubs with paw prints on them, stepped through the glass doors. "We're ready for you in the back. The one from Lackland just arrived yesterday." "On my way," Jake said. As he passed, the old man looked up from his coffee. His eyes were the washed-out blue of people who had spent a long time squinting into bad light. "You picking up the soldier dog?" the old man asked. Jake paused. "The what?" The old man tapped the side of his cup. "The one from the A Force Base. Combat dog." "Yeah," Jake said after a beat. "Retired military working dog. She's going to be my partner in the department's K9 unit." The old man's gaze sharpened. "You handled dogs before, son." "I'm post-certified for K9 and did my handler course," Jake said, a little stiffly. "So, yeah." "Certification's paper," the old man said. "The dog is not paper." Jake huffed a quick breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "I'll keep that in mind." The old man studied him with a faint frown, then lifted his chin toward the shelter doors. "Those dogs, they remember. Don't treat what they remember like it's nothing. They're not pets, even when they are retired. They are mission stuck in fur." Jake shifted his weight. This wasn't his first rodeo. He'd been a cop in Cedar Ridge for 9 years. He'd done patrol, traffic, narcotics, a stint as acting sergeant. He'd worked with K9 teams, taken downs with their help, sat on curbs with panting shepherds leaning against his leg while waiting for backup. He'd taught at the academy. He knew dogs. "I appreciate the advice," he said, though his tone betrayed that he didn't, particularly. "I'll take good care of her." "Care ain't enough," the old man muttered. "Listen to her. She knows more about ghosts than you ever will." Jake's mouth quirked. "Ghosts? Huh." The old man made a small gesture, half shrug, half dismissal. "You'll see," Jake said. "Have a good day, sir," and went inside, the automatic doors whispering shut behind him. The old man stared after him for a long moment, then shook his head and sipped his coffee. The dog's name was Delta. At least, that's what her kennel card said. Delta L211. Belgian Malinois, sable coat, 5 years old. Tattoo helpfully noted. Medical history extensive. Deployment history. Classified, stamped in red. She stood at the rear of the run when Jake approached, weight evenly distributed, tail low but not tucked, ears flicked forward. Her eyes were dark and direct. No frantic panting, no whining or pacing. She was still in that sharp, contained way that made you think of coiled wire. "Hey, girl," Jake said, crouching a few feet away from a mesh. "Delta, right." Her gaze flicked to his face and held there. No bark, no rush to the fence. Just a long, measuring look. "Just got in yesterday," the text said. "She's calm, but we're not opening that gate without you on the other side, just so you know." "She's on." Jake smiled. "That's good. I like them on." He slipped into the run with practiced ease, sidestepping to give her space, his body angled, hands low and relaxed. He kept his voice light, his movements unhurried. He'd done this before with nervy shepherds pulled out of bad yards, with shelter pit mixes that didn't know what a leash was. He extended his hand at hip level, fingers curled loosely. Delta sniffed, then moved past his hand and walked a slow circle around him, her back brushing his thigh just enough to let him know she was there. Jake stayed still, letting her collect whatever information she needed. "Good girl," he murmured. "You and me are going to be a team." She paused, nose near his waist, then stepped forward and sat between him and the gate, as if staking a claim. The tech exhaled. "Well, she likes you better than she liked the last guy." She nearly took his arm off. Jake's grin flashed quick and satisfied. "What did he do?" "Tried to hug her," the tech said, rolling her eyes. "Some people shouldn't be allowed to own socks. Never mind dogs." Fair point, Jake said. He reached down and scratched Delta behind the ear, watching her reactions. A momentary tension, then a deliberate lean into his hand. Not relaxed, quite, more calibrated acceptance. He thought of the old man outside talking about ghosts and mission and almost laughed. People romanticized military dogs. That was the problem. You had to treat them like what they were, tools. Highly trained, capable tools, but tools all the same. Jake believed in structure, procedures, training hours, commands and corrections. Dogs fit into that framework neatly if you were competent. Mission stuck in Faye. Sure. 2 weeks later, he was regretting that smoking sure almost hourly. Delta was good. Too good. She flew through the department's basic integration work. Obedience was razor-sharp. Heel, sit, down, stay. She snapped into positions like a spring-loaded rifle. Her detection work on the training hides was fast and precise. She nailed every box, every locker, every staged vehicle as if she'd known where the drugs were hidden before she walked in. It should have left Jake smug. Instead, it left him uneasy. She also did things he hadn't taught her, things that didn't fit into the syllabus. On their third night shift together, they responded to a domestic call that had escalated into barricade territory. The suspect was inside, lights off, refusing to answer, neighbors already filming with their phones. Jake brought Delta up to the front, intending to stage her in the yard while SWAT rolled. As they approached the porch, Delta's body shifted. Her ears flattened. Her eyes went from alert to something sharper. She stopped dead at the bottom step and looked not at the door but at the second-floor corner window. Easy, Jake said. Stay. She ignored the command, not moving, gaze locked upward, muscles quivering. Then, in a deliberate motion, she stepped sideways so that Jake's body was between her and the house. Jake's hand tightened on the lead. Delta, heel. She didn't heel. She didn't do anything except hold position, her attention never dropping from that window. Mercer. Officer Ruiz called from behind the cruiser. You going up or what? In a second, Jake said. Delta's got a scent. Maybe he cracked the upstairs window. Can you get her around the back? The lieutenant asked. We'll stack on the front if SWAT doesn't get here in time. Jake considered it. Delta still wouldn't move. It was like her paws were welded to the concrete. Come on, girl, he murmured, tugging the lead gently. Backyard. We worked the scent from there. Her lips peeled back a fraction, not in a growl but in something that looked disturbingly like refusal. Then she did growl, low and continuous, and took another exact step sideways, widening the angle so that more of a body was behind Jake. Okay, that's weird, Ruiz said. What's her problem? Jake frowned. I don't. The first shot punched out the upstairs window and took a fist-sized chunk out of the porch column where his head would have been if he'd taken that step up with it he'd wanted to take 30 seconds ago. Everyone dove for cover, glass raining onto the lawn. Delta lunged backward, dragging him down with her, body dropping into a prone position between him and the house, teeth bared now with purpose. Sniper upstairs. Ruiz yelled into his shoulder MIC, voice cracking. We're taking fire. Later, after the suspect was brought out in cuffs, after SWAT had cleared the house and the neighbors had been shooed away, the lieutenant clapped Jake on the shoulder. Good handling, he said. That dog just saved your ass. Jake scratched Delta's neck where she pressed against his leg. She had relaxed once the threat was over, but during the chaos she'd been a force, moving with him, shoving him behind the cruiser, staying low and controlled, never breaking into blind panic. She's trained for gunfire, Jake said. That's all. Ruiz snorted. Don't undersell it, man. She knew something was wrong before the first shot. I saw her. She staged you. You sure you're the one handling her, not the other way around? Jake shrugged the comment off, but it stuck. Later that night, when he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he found himself thinking of the shelter bench and the old man's faintly irritated voice. They remember. Don't treat what they remember like it's nothing. She picked up a sound, or a smell, he muttered to the dark. That's all. There's no ghosts about it. The ceiling didn't argue, but Delta, on the dog bed in the corner, lifted her head and looked at him for a long time, as if she could smell the lie. The invitation came 3 weeks after that. Jake's chief called him into the office, where a man in a tan uniform with eagles on his collar was already sitting. The man looked like every recruiting poster Jake had ever seen. Square jaw, correct posture, hair in exact regulation length. His nameplate read Carter. "Sergeant Mercer," the chief said. "This is Colonel Carter, U.S. Army. Is here on loan from the Advanced Military Working Dog Program." "Yes, sir," Jake said, shaking hands. The colonel's grip was firm but not crushing. His eyes flicked to the canine patch on Jake's shoulder. "I hear your dog is something special," the colonel said. "She's good," Jake said. "We got lucky." "I don't believe in luck," the colonel replied mildly. "I believe in training, genetics, and occasionally providence, but not luck." Jake wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he stayed quiet. "We're running a joint exercise at Fort Drummond," the colonel continued. "Military, federal, and select local handlers. High-intensity scenario work, multi-environment, live fire. I asked to include a few civilian teams with strong performance metrics. Your chief volunteered you." Jake's gaze flicked to the chief, who smiled. "It's a compliment, Mercer, and a chance to sharpen your skills. Expenses covered." "What about shifts?" Jake asked. "We're already short-staffed." "I'll rob patrol if I have to," the chief said briskly. "This is good for the department. And from what I'm hearing, that dog of yours can teach the Army a thing or two." The colonel's mouth curved, the barest hint of amusement. "We'll see about that." Jake felt a flicker of pride. Delta had become a legend in the building faster than any rookie. Stories of the sniper incident had spread and grown legs. In them, she leapt through bullets, pulled Jake out from under a hail of fire, probably wrote the report afterward. He knew the truth was less dramatic. But still, she was good. "I'll go," he said. "Excellent." The colonel slid a folder across the desk. "Report to Fort Drummond this Friday at 0700 hours. Bring full gear. We'll take it from there." Jake nodded, already thinking about travel time, hotel options, what to pack. On his way out of the station, he passed the break room. Ruiz looked up from his coffee. "What's with the folder?" he asked. "Getting drafted," Jake said. "Some Army canine training thing at Drummond." "Look at you," Ruiz said. "Going to hang with the big dogs." Jake smirked. Big dogs, little dogs, it all smells the same in the end. Fort Drummond was larger than Jake had expected. Military bases were always cities unto themselves, but this one felt like an entire country compressed into fences and gates, motor pools and airstrips, barracks and housing developments, endless stretches of training ranges. The canine facility sat at the edge of one of those ranges, a sprawl of low buildings and kennels. The air smelled of dust, hot concrete, and dog. As Jake parked the department Tahoe, Delta stood in the back crate, silently watching through the vents. The moment he opened the rear door, she moved to the front of the crate, tail giving a restrained wag. "Okay, girl," he said, clipping on her lead. "New place, new people. Don't embarrass me." She hopped down with her usual precise grace, nose already working, cataloging odors. A group of handlers crossed the lot ahead, some in Army camo, some in DHS jackets, a few in local PD uniforms. Dogs moved at their sides, mostly shepherds and Malinois, one Labrador wearing a search and rescue vest. Jake felt that familiar flicker of competitive ego. He had never been the best at team sports in school, but he excelled at anything that let him measure himself against others in quieter, more technical ways. Skill courses, qualifications, scored events. Now he and Delta were in the big leagues. "Sergeant Mercer." He turned. Colonel Carter was walking toward him, flanked by a captain juggling a tablet. "Yes, sir." "Good," the colonel said, giving Delta a quick, appraising look. "Let's get you checked in. Briefing in 20. Jake fell into step beside him. Delta moved between them, body perfectly aligned with his leg. "How long have you had her?" the colonel asked. "About a month, sir," Jake said. "She just rotated out of active service." "The 341st sent her record," the colonel said. "They were reluctant to let her go." Jake felt a small swell of smugness. "Their loss, our gain." The colonel's mouth quirked. Perhaps. Or perhaps they knew something you don't yet. Jake frowned slightly. Her record looked solid, sir. Solid is one word for it, the colonel said. We'll talk more later. For now, listen during the brief. The woman running it is someone you should pay attention to. Yes, sir, Jake said, filing that note away in the mental folder labeled networking. Inside the main building, the briefing room was already half full. Handlers and dogs took seats along the perimeter, leaving the central chairs dog-free for anyone without a four-legged shadow. Jake chose a chair near the middle. Delta settled at his feet instantly, curling herself under the chair in a compact ball that was anything but relaxed. Her eyes flicked over every person entering the room. At precisely 0900, a woman walked to the front. Jake almost didn't register her at first. She was small, barely over 5 feet, and slight, her short hair a soft silver. She wore standard army camo pants and a plain olive t-shirt, with no visible rank. The most notable thing about her was that she moved like she had already mapped the room, like she knew where every table and chair had been placed even before they'd set them up. Conversation dimmed as she reached the podium. Colonel Carter stepped aside to stand against the wall, as if ceding the floor. "Morning," the woman said, voice steady. No microphone, but everyone heard her. "I'm Morgan. For the purposes of this week, that's all you need to call me. I'll be your primary instructor." Jake glanced at her hands. Her fingers were long and scarred. Old scars. White against tan. His gaze flicked up to her face. Lines bracketed her mouth and eyes, not from smiling but from squinting into hard horizons. "This week's focus is advanced environmental work," she went on. "Urban, rural, and mixed. Live fire, distraction drills, multi-dog staging, night ops. Half of you think you're hot stuff or you wouldn't be here." A few people chuckled. She didn't smile. "Some of you are," she acknowledged. "Most of you aren't, yet. That's fine. That's why you're here. But I'll make something clear up front. Your dog knows more than you do." Jake felt his spine stiffen a fraction. "Your job is to learn to listen to the dog without making up stories," Morgan said. "Dog looks at a window and freezes. It's not a ghost. It's not magic. It's data. It's information. Your ego will try to turn it into an argument. Don't let it." Jake suppressed a grimace. He did not appreciate someone summarizing his last few weeks in one sentence. "Some of you white patrol, some detection, some search and rescue," Morgan continued. "The principles are the same. Over the next 5 days, we're going to stress your dogs, stress you, and see who bends and who breaks. I don't care if you're Army, Federal, local, or volunteer. Out there, the bullet doesn't care what color your uniform is, and neither does the dog." She paused, eyes scanning the room. They swept past Jake, then moved back and lingered a second longer. He had the impression she had read his whole file in that quick look. Years on patrol, commendations, complaints, training courses, the sniper call. Then she shifted her attention and went on. Colonel Carter pushed off the wall and stepped forward. "Many of you have seen videos of explosive detection dogs in the sandbox, or patrol dogs taking down suspects in body armor," he said. "Before you came here, maybe someone told you that the modern program is the pinnacle of canine work." A few nods around the room. Jake didn't nod, but he didn't disagree either. "I'll tell you something different," the colonel said. "We stand on the shoulders of the ones who did this before there were body cams, before there were vests sized for dogs, before there were even proper medals for them. The person up here," he gestured at Morgan with something that looked very much like respect, "was running point with a dog in jungles while most of you were still a twinkle in your parents' eyes. So when she tells you to do something this week, do it." Jake blinked. "Jungles." The colonel's gaze cut across the room and landed on Jake. For a moment, Jake felt pinned. "She won't say this herself," the colonel went on, "so I'll say it for her. She's not just an instructor. She's a veteran scout dog handler. Vietnam." There was a beat of silence, like the room had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. Someone near the back let out a low whistle. A DHS handler muttered, "No way," under his breath. The colonel's lips curled faintly. "Way," he said. She ran a scout dog on combat patrols when that meant walking your best friend into ambushes so others didn't die. So if any of you are tempted to blow off her advice on dogs, don't. Trust me, you won't like how that ends. He smiled then, quick and sharp. She's Vietnam Scout dog handler, he said, like that was the whole argument, and stepped back. The words landed in Jake's chest like a stone dropped into deep water. She's Vietnam Scout dog handler. His mind flicked, unbidden, to the shelter bench. An old man with washed-out blue eyes saying, "They remember. They're not pets, even when they are retired. They are mission stuck in Faye." He had dismissed the old man's advice as nostalgia and myth, some relic from another era, clinging to old war stories. Now he stood a living embodiment of those stories, in front of a room full of people who thought they knew dogs. Delta shifted under his chair, just enough that her shoulder touched his boot. Jake found himself sitting up straighter, staring at the woman with a new kind of attention. They started outside. The first exercise was deceptively simple, a walk in the park, Morgan called it, though the reality was a carefully constructed slice of chaos. The park was a section of the training area turned into an obstacle course masquerading as a suburban afternoon. There were benches, trash cans, parked cars, a playground with swings, a picnic area under trees. Speakers hidden in bushes played a loop of distant laughter, traffic noise, and, occasionally, a slamming door or car backfire. They were to walk their dog through the area on lead, nothing more. No formal obedience, just being there. "It's boring," one of the army handlers muttered as they lined up. Morgan, who apparently had bat-level hearing, turned her head. "Is it?" He straightened. "I just meant." "I heard what you meant," she said. "Here's what I want from you on this pass. Count every time your dog tells you something you didn't ask for. Every head turn, ear flick, pace change. Then we'll see how boring it is." Jake made a mental note. Do not mutter around Morgan. He clicked his tongue softly, and Delta stood, eyes fixed on his face. "Foos," he said, and she slid into heel position, shoulder at his knee, leash loose. They stepped into the park. The first thing Jake noticed was that Delta's gait changed. It was tiny, a small extension of her stride, a little more spring in her step. High arousal, he thought. New environment. She'll settle. Her ears pivoted toward the swings where Dummy sat, gently moving in the breeze. Her nose lifted toward the trash can near the path. Her eyes cut left, right, overhead. Normally, Jake would have corrected any deviation with a quick tap on the lead, bringing her attention squarely back to him. That was, after all, the point of textbook heel. Dog watches handler, not environment. Morgan's voice floated over from somewhere behind them. "If your dog spends this entire pass staring at your face, congratulations. You've trained a very pretty, very useless lawn ornament." Jake's hand froze halfway to the leash. Delta flicked a glance up at him, then back to the environment. As they passed a bench, she slowed half a pace, nostrils flaring at a tiny dark patch on the wood, a fragment of blood-spatter scent, maybe, or a drop of training aid. He let her slow, just a fraction. "Good girl," he murmured. They walked on. A distant car backfired on the speaker track. Delta's head snapped up, body weight shifting. No flinch, no startle, just calculation, and then she re-centered. By the time they exited the park, Jake's mental tally of unasked-for information was well into double digits. Morgan stood at the exit, arms folded. "Tell me what your dog told you," she said as each team passed. The cocky army handler from earlier shrugged. "Nothing much. She was a little distracted by the sounds, but I kept her focused on me." Morgan's expression didn't change. "So your dog sees and hears nothing unless you say it's okay. Is that the handler you want in front of you clearing a building? One that can't process without your permission?" He flushed. "Well, no, You just trained out independent observation," she said. "It's a common mistake. Fix it." When Jake's turn came, he swallowed, conscious of sweat between his shoulder blades. "She was engaged with the environment," he said. "Checked the swings, the bins. Slowed at the bench. Took in the backfire sound, decided it wasn't a threat." Morgan nodded once. And what did that tell you? That she's scanning, he said slowly. Not anxious. Just on. Morgan's eyes flicked to Delta. Good, she said. Now tell me something she told you that you missed. Jake blinked. I think back, she said quietly. First 10 steps. He replayed the walk in his head. Entry, path, swings, bins, bench. He remembered her gait shift, the tiny extra bounce. She got taller, he said suddenly. Morgan's mouth curved. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. There you go. Contact arousal. She went from new place, cataloging to this could be work. You didn't ask for that. That's history talking. Jake glanced down at Delta. She gazed back steadily, as if aware they were discussing her. History, he repeated. She's been in places like this where boredom meant death, Morgan said bluntly. Markets with IEDs, alleyways with snipers, random noises and pressure changes and the smell of diesel laced with explosives. Her muscles remember things your conscious brain never will. He felt a cold wash under his ribs. It's your job not to fight that memory, Morgan said. You can channel it, put structure around it, but if you punish it because it pulls focus from you, you're an idiot. The word landed with a little sting. Jake opened his mouth, then closed it. He thought of all the times he'd corrected Delta for glancing up at rooftops or doorways instead of keeping her eyes on him like the training manual said. I don't want to be an idiot, he said, surprising himself with the honesty. Good, she said. It's fixable. They ran exercise after exercise. In one, the handlers had to move their dogs through a maze of buildings while pyrotechnics mimicked incoming fire and explosions. Jake watched as handlers froze, crouched, shouted conflicting commands. Dogs either shut down, flattened by overcorrection, or spun out, barking hysterically. Delta didn't bark. When the first blast went off, she flinched, then immediately repositioned herself at Jake's side, angling her body to shield his left leg. When simulated rounds cracked overhead, she pushed into his knee, urging him toward cover that he hadn't yet consciously chosen. Twice, she stopped dead, ears and nose tracking something in the environment. Both times, when they investigated later, Morgan pointed out details he'd missed. A window half an inch more open than the others, a glint of metal behind a crate. You think she remembers what it's like? Jake asked that evening, sitting on a concrete stoop behind the kennel block. The sun was sinking, painting the training grounds in bands of gold and shadow. Delta lay at his feet, chewing on a tug toy, eyes half closed. Morgan sat a few feet away, her back against the wall, a mug of dark coffee between her palms. She had a habit of drinking coffee at all hours, as if sleep was something she borrowed rather than owned. I don't think, she said. I know. You ran a scout dog, right? Jake said. In the jungle. Morgan's eyes drifted to some point beyond the horizon. Her name was Tess, she said. Also a different bloodline. Was she like Delta? She was Tess, Morgan said. Delta is Delta. But yes. Same engine. Same eyes. What was it like? The question slipped out before he could filter it. Being out front. Morgan's fingers tightened around the mug. You ever walk into a dark room without a flashlight? She asked. You stick your hand out, right? Feel your way. Dog's the hand. We were the arm. Everyone else was the body. Jake pictured it. A patrol moving through jungle, one small woman and one dog at the point. Everything ahead of them unknown. You ever get ambushed? He asked. That's not the question, she said. He frowned. What is? She turned her head to look at him fully. Her gaze was steady and unexpectedly kind. The question is, did the dog ever fail you? She said. And the answer is no. Not once. People failed her. People ignored her. People rushed her. People put missions and schedules and egos above what she was telling them. But she never failed. Jake felt heat creep up the back of his neck. It was as if he had been sitting on that shelter bench weeks ago, watching him brush off the old man. There was an old guy at the shelter where I picked Delta up, he said slowly. He tried to give me advice about. Let me guess, Morgan cut in gently. He told you they remember. That they are not pets. Jake blinked. Yeah, exactly. You know him. There's one of him in every town. she said. Sometimes he's got a ball cap with a unit patch. Sometimes he sits in the back corner of the VFW. Sometimes there's a woman with a walking stick. They look soft now, because time does that. But decades ago, they walk point. He swallowed. I kind of blew him off. Of course you did, Morgan said, not unkindly. You're young. You're competent. You have certifications. He's old. He smells like coffee and liniment. And people cross the street to avoid the haunted look in his eyes. Why would you listen to him? Jake winced. When you put it like that, I sound like a jerk. You sound human, Morgan said, which is less forgivable for someone handling a dog like Delta, but still fixable. He looked down at Delta. She had stopped chewing the tug and was watching him instead, as if waiting to see what he'd do with this information. What would you have done, he asked Morgan, if you were me on that bench? She considered him for a long moment. I'd have asked him one question. What question? Who was your dog? She said softly. And then I'd have shut up and listened until he was done talking. Jake rested his forearms on his knees, the weight of unasked questions suddenly heavy. I can't go back, he said. Find him, I mean. I don't even know his name. You don't have to, Morgan said. You've met me now. I'm your designated old person. A small spark of humor flared in her eyes. And you can still make it right in a different way. How? By not being that guy for the next handler, she said. The one who thinks paper equals knowledge. The one who corrects the dog for doing the job too well. The one who can't tell the difference between a dog screaming in fear and a dog saying we need to leave now. Jake opened his mouth to say he wasn't that guy, then remembered the porch steps, Delta stepping sideways, his hand tightening on the leash to force her forward. I have been that guy, he said, the admission thick. Morgan nodded, as if she'd been waiting for that. Good. First step. First step to what? He asked. She looked out at the darkening field. Somewhere, a dog barked, then another answered. To deserving her, Morgan said quietly. The next day, they ran a night exercise. The scenario was a downed helicopter in a mock village. Handlers and dogs had to navigate from a landing zone through alleys and courtyards, locate survivors, role players, identify threats, and call for extraction, all while under simulated sporadic fire. Jake checked Delta's harness under the glow of red lights. She tolerated the process with her usual patience, but he could feel the extra tension in her muscles, the almost imperceptible shiver of anticipation. You good, girl, he whispered, adjusting the strap across her chest. We've got this. She huffed softly, then pressed her head briefly against his thigh. Morgan appeared at his elbow like a wraith. Remember, she said, she's seen bad nights. Don't treat this like a game. Respect the memory without indulging it. What does that mean? He asked. Don't baby her, she said. Don't apologize for the past she doesn't need apologies for. But when she tells you this feels like that other thing, don't call her crazy. He nodded, throat tight. They moved into the village. The red lights soon faded behind them. In the alleys, shadows pooled thick. The only sounds were boots on gravel, the faint rattle of gear, and the soft pad of paws. Delta, Foos, he whispered. She slid to heel position, head slightly ahead of his knee, nose working the air. A low boom rolled across the night, followed by the crackle of static over his radio. Simulated artillery impact. Overhead, a light flared and died, leaving afterimages on his retinas. Delta didn't flinch. She glided forward, every line of her body aligned with his. They turned a corner. Delta stopped. It wasn't abrupt. It was a smooth deceleration, like a car easing to a halt. Her front paw hovered an inch above the ground, then settled carefully. Her nostrils flared, mouth closed. Her ears angled forward, then slightly right. What do you have? Jake murmured. She took a half step forward, then angled her body so that her chest faced an apparently empty doorway. Her tail gave one slow, deliberate wag. Alert. In there, he whispered. She didn't move. Her breathing slowed. He felt the urge to push her on, to hustle, to meet the exercise time standard. They needed to reach the downed bird within a tight window. He also remembered Morgan's voice. If you punish it because it pulls focus from you, You're an idiot. Joe, he whispered. Delta padded forward, slow and deliberate, into the doorway's shadow. Jake followed, weapon at low ready. Inside, the air shifted, cooler, tinged with something metallic. A moan came from the darkness. Help! Jake flicked on his flashlight. A role player lay against the wall, blood smeared across his chest. A training dummy rifle lay just out of his reach. Got a survivor, Jake said into his MIC, marking the location. The role player groaned again. Bad guys in the next building. 2 of them. They said they're going to finish us off. Delta's ears flicked, but she didn't move closer to the wounded man. Instead, she backed up until her side pressed against Jake's leg. Eyes on the opposite wall. What is it? He whispered. She glanced up at him, then back at the wall. Her breathing quickened. We're moving, he said. He signaled for a medic team and continued through the alley. The next doorway looked just like the first. Ordinary. 2 steps up, no obvious signs of tampering. Delta's hackles rose in a slow, graduating wave. Jake's skin prickled. Friendlies, he called softly. No answer. Delta, search, he whispered. She stayed at his side. He frowned. Search, he repeated, giving the hand signal. She ignored it. Instead, she took that now familiar sideways step, positioning herself between him and the doorway, head low, a soft growl humming in her chest. The urge to correct her leapt up, conditioned by years of training. Command given, command obeyed. But the memory of the porch column exploding into splinters flickered vivid in his mind. He swallowed. Okay, he breathed. We'll do it your way. He radioed in. Possible hostile in Building 3, doorway east side. Dog indicates threat. Copy that, came the safety controller's voice. Proceed with caution. Jake hugged the opposite wall, peering in past the doorframe. His flashlight beam caught a glint. Metal wire, chest high, stretched across the entry at just the right height to catch someone in the neck if they stepped through without checking. He exhaled sharply. Booby trap. Simulation or not, it made his stomach twist. Delta's growl deepened for a moment, then faded as he stepped back and signaled the engineers forward to deal with it. Later, when the exercise controllers were debriefing them, one of them shook his head. You were the only team that didn't walk into that wire, he said. Good dog. It was her, Jake said. I was about to send her through like an idiot. Morgan, standing off to the side, raised an eyebrow. But you didn't, she said. No, he admitted. Because I remembered a grumpy old guy on a bench and a colonel telling me you walked point and where it was real. She tilted her head. And what did the grumpy old guy say? That they remember, Jake said. That they're not pets, even when they are retired. And Morgan pressed. He looked down at Delta, who was sniffing curiously at the date, the tip of her tail twitching. And that they are mission stuck in fur, he said quietly. Morgan's mouth curved. He was right, she said. He just didn't have the vocabulary to make you listen. I'm listening now, Jake said. Good, she replied. Then maybe we can do something about those ghosts. On the 3rd day, everything went sideways. The scenario was supposed to be simple. Building search, multiple rooms, 1 armed suspect, 1 unarmed, 1 kid hiding under a bed. The point was to test the dog's discrimination skills under stress. Jake and Delta went in confident. They'd rocked the previous day's drills. He was starting to feel a rhythm with her he'd never had with any dog before. It was like dancing with someone who knew the steps 3 counts ahead of you. They cleared the first 2 rooms efficiently. Delta flowed through the spaces, checking corners, sniffing doorframes, signaling with tiny changes of posture when she caught human scent. 3rd room, bathroom. Empty except for a decoy scent placed in the bath drain. She sniffed, dismissed it as irrelevant. 4th room, bedroom. As soon as they crossed the threshold, Delta froze. Contact. Jake whispered, heart rate spiking. Her body language was wrong. Not a late wrong. Not like the doorway during the night exercise. This was something else. Her muscles trembled. Her eyes went too wide, whites showing around the dark centers. Her breathing hitched, shallow and fast. Delta, easy, he murmured. We're good. Just another room. She didn't respond. Her gaze darted from closet door to bed to window, then back to him. Her ears were flattened now, tail low and tight. "Delta, down," he commanded. She didn't move. "Down," he repeated, steel in his tone. She backed up a step instead, her hindquarters butt-bumping the hallway doorframe. A small whine leaked from her throat. Jake felt frustration spike. This was an exercise. He knew intellectually that dogs could have bad days, just like people, but this was not the time. Controllers were watching. He had a standard to meet. "Down," he snapped, yanking the leash. She flinched, then, astonishingly, growled at him, a short, desperate sound. "What the hell?" he hissed. "Knock it off." He reached for her collar, intending to physically place her in a down. She jerked back, wrenching the lead from his hand. In 2 fluid steps she was in the hall, then turning, scrambling backward, claws skidding on linoleum. A buzzer blared overhead. The exercise director's voice boomed through the intercom. "Stop! Stop! Handler, remove your dog immediately." Jake stood frozen for a heartbeat, then swore and went after her. She had crammed herself into the corner near the stairwell, whole body trembling. "What just happened?" he demanded when they were outside, his cheeks burning. "She's never done that. Not once. Not even at the shelter." "Take a breath," Morgan said. He spun. He hadn't realized she'd followed them. "Did you see that? She just blew the whole exercise. I can't have a dog that melts down in a bedroom." Morgan's eyes were flat. "A bedroom," she repeated. "Yes," he snapped. "A bedroom. What's the problem? She's cleared 100 rooms. She did it last night. She can't freak out because there's a bed involved." Morgan stepped closer. "Do you know where she was deployed?" she asked quietly. "Classified," he shot back. Her record said classified. "Did you read between the lines?" she asked. "The casualties, the operation names, the pattern of her mission reports." He frowned, thrown. "I skimmed." "Of course you did," she said. "Because you assumed. You assumed you knew enough. You assumed dogs were interchangeable. Bedrooms are bedrooms. Doorways are doorways." Anger flared. "With respect, I treat her better than most cops treat their partners. I watch her signals. I listen. You just dragged her toward the one thing she told you she could not walk into." Morgan cut in, voice suddenly sharp. "And when she said, 'I can't,' you tried to force her anyway." Jake opened his mouth, then closed it. The memory of Delta backing up, eyes wide, hit him in the gut. "What's in that room?" he demanded. "It's training space. There's nothing in there that's not controlled." "Not in this room," Morgan said. "In her room. Wherever that was. However many years ago. That's what she was in. That's what you walked her into without warning." Guilt washed over him, cold and thick. "How am I supposed to know?" he whispered. "I wasn't there." "No," Morgan said. "But someone was. Someone wrote after-action reports. Someone has footage. Someone tried to forget and couldn't. That's why the army started bringing in people like me. Because the dogs came home full of a past nobody bothered to tell the new handlers about." He sank onto the stoop, suddenly exhausted. Delta pressed herself against his knees, trying to fold her shaking body into as small a space as possible. "What do I do now?" he asked. "Today," Morgan said, "you walk her. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere open. You let her decompress. Tomorrow, we'll try again, with more information." "Information like what?" he asked. She took a breath that seemed to cost her something. "You want to know what happened to a dog that moved like her? Fine." She sat beside him, leaving enough space that Delta's body could lean against both of them. "Tess saved 12 men from walking into an ambush in a hooch that looked almost exactly like that room," she said. "Same bed frame, same window placement. The difference was the smell. Something wasn't right." She froze, just like Delta did. I told them. I told them and told them. They overrode me. The captain wanted that building. He wanted it on the report. He pushed past me, pushed past her, went through that door." Her fingers tightened on her knees until the knuckles blanched. "I didn't go," she said. "Tess wouldn't move, and I wasn't going to drag her by the throat into what she told me was death. So he went without us. 3 men behind him. The blast blew the bed frame into the ceiling. It ripped the door off the hinges. "For dead." Tess screamed like I've never heard an animal scream. 4 days after, she wouldn't go near a bed, any bed, not even mine. Jake swallowed hard. Did she ever get over it? Morgan smiled then, a small, slow thing with sorrow tucked into the corners. She learned to work around it, she said. We found ways. Angles. I advocated for her every time some new lieutenant thought a dog's trauma was a character flaw. But that smell, that layout, it never meant anything but ghosts to her again. He looked at Delta's trembling back. So when I dragged her toward that bedroom, "You were telling her to walk into the explosion again," Morgan said. "And she refused." "I'm glad she did." He scrubbed a hand over his face. "I messed up." "Yes," Morgan said simply. "You did. But you're here, asking. That's more than some did." "What happened to Tess?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Morgan looked up at the sky. "She died there," she said. "In country. She took a piece of shrapnel meant for me on a different patrol. They buried her near the wire. No flag, no taps. Just a dainty blanket and a hole in the ground. The war dogs didn't come home then. Officially, they were equipment." Jake's throat ached. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words felt inadequate. "Don't be," Morgan said. "Be better with this one." He nodded slowly. "How?" "Next time she says no like that, don't argue," Morgan said. "Find another way. Talk to the controllers. Explain. If they say that's not in the script, tell them the script is wrong. Be the handler she needed back then." He glanced at her. "And what about you?" "What about me?" she asked. "Who was your handler?" he asked quietly. "Back then." For the first time, her eyes softened in a way that had nothing to do with dogs. "Tess," she said. "It was always Tess." The last day of the course came too soon. They gathered in the briefing room once more, dogs at their feet, notebooks full of scribbles, heads full of new ways of seeing. Colonel Carter stood at the front, arms folded loosely. "You've all improved," he said. "Some more than others. Some of you will go back to your units and be told to forget half of what you learned here because it doesn't fit on a checklist." A few weary laughs rippled through the room. "Don't forget it," he said. "Write your own checklists. Advocate for your dogs. If someone tells you that's not how we've always done it, remind them that how we've always done it used to be leaving dogs behind." He glanced at Morgan. She was leaning against the back wall, mug in hand, listening with her customary stillness. "Most of all," Carter went on, "remember that every dog you handle is the sum of all their yesterdays. You're responsible for their tomorrows. Don't treat those like they're blank pages." He stepped aside. "Morgan." She pushed off the wall and moved to the podium. "I'm not big on speeches," she said. "You already know that." Someone snorted. A few people grinned. "So I'll say one thing," she went on. "If you came here thinking you were here to teach your dog something, flip that. You were here so your dog could teach you. If you leave with nothing else, leave with that." Her gaze found Jake in the middle row. "Some of you learned fast. Some of you learned the hard way. All of you owe your dogs an apology for the times you didn't listen. Whether you give it to them out loud is up to you." Jake felt his ears burn. He suspected she was talking directly to him, and he didn't mind. After the dismissal, the handlers milled about, exchanging numbers, stories, promises to visit. Dogs sniffed each other, tails wagging or held politely still, depending on personality. Jake clipped Delta's lead and headed for the door. He had a long drive back to Cedar Ridge and a head full of things he needed to articulate before the noise of regular life drowned them out. "Sergeant Mercer." He turned. Colonel Carter was striding toward him, Morgan at his shoulder. "Yes, sir," Jake said. "You did good work this week," the colonel said. "Your after-action reports showed growth. I like growth." "Thank you, sir," Jake said. "Most of the credit goes to her." Delta thumped her tail once, as if acknowledging the compliment. "It does," the colonel agreed. "And to her." He nodded toward Morgan. Jake met her gaze. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It does. If your department ever wants to send more handlers," the colonel added, "we'd be happy to have them. Preferably before they develop too many bad habits." "I'll tell the chief," Jake said. He thinks his God's gift to law enforcement, so I might phrase it carefully. Carter chuckled. Do that. Drive safe. And listen to your dog. Yes, sir. The colonel walked away to talk to another group. Morgan lingered. You going to find your old man? She asked. How? Jake asked. Is just a guy on a bench. Shelter's got security cameras, she said. Asked to review the footage. Look for a jacket with a faded patch. Or walk by on the same day, same time. Creatures of habit, old soldiers. He blinked. You think he was one of you? I know he was one of us, she said. No civilian talks about mission stuck in fur unless they've watched a dog walk into danger for them. He nodded slowly. If I find him, what do I say? Exactly what you just said to me, she replied. That you didn't listen then, but you're listening now. And ask him who his dog was. He smiled, small and a bit shaky. You really want his dog's name on your ghost roll, huh? She looked past him, eyes far away. I want them all, she said softly. Every last one. He swallowed. If I find out, I'll tell you. I'll be around, she said. Ghosts don't retire. They just get new assignments. Delta nudged Jake's hand with her nose, as if to say, time to go. He squeezed her ear gently. We're going, he told her. To Morgan, he said, thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet, she said. I gave you homework. He laughed, startled. Yeah, I guess you did. She lifted her mug in a half salute. Safe travels, Sergeant. Take care of her. I will, he said. I'll deserve her. One day. She gave him the almost smile again. That's the only qualification that matters. The shelter looked the same. Same cracked concrete bench. Same faded paint on the doors. Same sign about spaying and neutering swinging slightly in the breeze. Delta sat beside him on the bench, her leash looped loosely around his wrist. She shifted occasionally, sniffing the air, watching cars come and go. They'd been there 3 Tuesdays in a row now. Same time he'd been there when he first picked her up. The first week, no sign of the old man. The second week, a woman in a floral dress took his spot, scrolling on her phone. Jake had almost given up. It had been weeks. Maybe the old man only came once. Maybe he was a hallucination conjured by his guilt. This third week, though, a battered pickup pulled into the far corner of the lot. The driver sat for a minute, engine idling, then turned it off and climbed out. Jake recognized the jacket first, then the gait, slow but stubborn. The old man walked to the bench, saw Jake and Delta, and hesitated. This seat taken? He asked. Not if you want it, Jake said. The old man settled onto the far end with a small grunt, cane wedged between his knees. He smelled of coffee and something sharp and medicinal. That the soldier dog? He asked after a moment, nodding at Delta. Yeah, Jake said. Delta. The old man studied her. She looked back, unblinking. Then, to Jake's surprise, she shifted and lay so that her flank touched the toe of the old man's boot. She knows, he murmured. Knows what? Jake asked. That I've got dog on me, the old man said. Like smoke in clothes. They sat in silence for a bit, watching a family bring in a cardboard box of yowling kittens. I owe you an apology, Jake said finally. The old man glanced at him. For what? For not listening, Jake said. Last time, you told me something important and I brushed you off because I thought I had it handled. The old man took a slow sip of coffee. You got your paper certificates, he said. Your training, your shiny badge. Hard to hear some old fossil over all that. Jake winced. Yeah, he admitted. Something like that. What changed? The old man asked. I met someone, Jake said. She worked scout dogs. In the jungle. She backed you up. The old man's eyes sharpened. What's her name? Morgan, Jake said. She runs training at Fort Drummond sometimes. Recognition flickered across the old man's face. Little thing, he asked. Eyes like she's still there even when she's here. Yeah, Jake said, surprised. You know her. We were in country around the same time, he said. Different units, same nightmares. Then you understand better than anyone, Jake said. About dogs like Delta. The old man looked down at Delta. She's got that look, he said. Still half over there. You treat her right. Maybe she'll come all the way home one day. I'm trying, Jake said. I learned a lot this month. Mostly about how much I don't know. That's the first real lesson, the old man said. Everything after that's detail. Jake took a breath. Can I ask you something? Sure, the old man said. Who was your dog? Jake asked. The old man's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. For a moment, Jake thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, very softly, Ranger. Jake felt something in the air shift, like the moment before a storm when the wind changes direction. What was he like? He asked. The old man smiled, and for an instant Jake saw the young man he'd once been, standing in some foreign field with a dog at his side. He was stubborn, the old man said fondly. Didn't like taking orders unless he agreed with them. Smart as a whip. Liked socks. Used to steal them from laundry lines. You'd be on patrol, and he'd have one stuffed in his mouth like a cigar. Jake laughed, picturing it. Delta lifted her head, ears twitching. He saved my life more times than I can count, the old man went on. Saved other guys' lives, too. Sniffed out booby traps, ambushes, tunnels. There was one day. He trailed off, eyes going distant. You don't have to, Jake started to say. No, the old man said. You asked. That means you owed the answer. He took a slow breath. We were sweeping a village. Routine. I thought it was routine, anyway. Ranger didn't. He stopped dead at this doorway. Just locked up. Looked at me, then at the door, then sat down and wouldn't budge. I argued. Of course I did. Captain wanted that building cleared like the rest. We had a schedule. We had objectives. Jake's chest tightened. It was the same story, told from a different angle. I put my hand on his collar to drag him, the old man said. He cried. I don't mean yelped. I mean he made this sound like something tearing. And I couldn't do it. Couldn't make him go somewhere he was that sure of. So I went to the captain and said, So, my dog says no. Pick another door. What did he say? Jake asked, even though he already knew. He said, it's a damn dog. The old man's mouth twisted. He went in without us. Took 3 men with him. You can guess the rest. Jake swallowed. I'm sorry, he said again, useless words. So am I, the old man said. Because I was standing in the street holding onto Ranger's collar like it was a lifeline while they died. That's a hell of a thing to live with. Knowing you walked away when they didn't. You didn't walk away, Jake said quietly. You listened. The old man shrugged. Depends who you ask. Some of them never forgave me. Said I was more loyal to a dog than to my squad. Maybe they were right. I don't think so, Jake said. I think you were loyal to the only one who knew the truth. The old man looked at him, something like gratitude flickering across his face. And you, he asked. You got your moment yet? Where it's you and the dog and everyone else tells you you're wrong. Yeah, Jake said softly. Couple times now. And what did you do? The first time, I almost dragged her forward, he admitted. She stopped me. The second time, I listened. The old man's shoulders dropped a fraction, as if some tension he'd held for years had loosened by a hair. Good, he said. Maybe the next kid won't have to choose, if folks like you keep listening. They sat in silence for a moment, the sun warm on their faces, the shelter doors opening and closing with a soft whoosh as people came and went. Ranger didn't come home, did he? Jake asked gently. The old man's jaw tightened. No, none of them did. Not officially. They said the dogs were equipment. Supplies. Cheaper to leave him than ship him. I tried to get him on the manifest. Forged paperwork. Pulled strings. Didn't work. He just disappeared into the bureaucracy. Jake's eyes burned. Delta made it, he said. Different war, different rules. She got to come home. To me. Then you've got both of them, the old man said. Her and the shadow of every dog that didn't make it. Don't waste that. I won't, Jake said. Delta shifted, standing, and stepped closer to the old man. In an almost deliberate motion, she rested her head on his knee. The old man's breath hitched. His hand trembled as he set his coffee cup down and laid his palm gently on her neck. There you are, he whispered. Not to Jake, not to anyone in particular. There you are, boy. Jake looked away, giving them the privacy of that moment. His eyes landed on the shelter door, where a family with small kids was leaving, a new puppy wriggling in the mother's arms. Normal life, he thought. Birthday parties, car seats, dogs who only ever chased tennis balls and squirrels. Delta was not that kind of dog. Ranger hadn't been. Tess hadn't. The nameless, countless others who had walked point in jungles and deserts weren't. But they were part of this world now. Part of this parking lot, this bench, this ordinary Tuesday. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out the scrap of paper on which he'd written a phone number. "There's a training facility at Fort Drummond," he said, clearing his throat. "The colonel there is trying to track down names. Dogs that didn't come home. To get them on some kind of roll. A memorial. If you want Ranger on that list." He held out the paper. The old man took it, fingers careful. "You think it matters?" he asked, voice rough. "I think it matters to the people who love them," Jake said, "and to the ones like me who are trying to do better because of them." The old man folded the paper and slipped it into his wallet. "Maybe I'll call," he said, "if I can get the words out." "Take your time," Jake said. "They've waited this long." They sat for a while longer, talking about training and weather and small-town politics. Delta alternated between leaning on one and then the other, sharing warmth. When the old man finally stood to go, he patted Delta's head. "You watch his back," he told her. "He's still learning." Delta wagged her tail once, solemnly. The old man looked at Jake. "You take care, son. And when you see that little scout handler again, you tell her some of us remember Tess, even if the army paperwork doesn't." "I will," Jake said. He watched the old man walk back to his truck and drive away. Then he looked down at Delta. "Let's go home," he said. She tilted her head as if to say, "Home is wherever you finally listen." Months later, on a cold November day, Jake stood in the back of a small auditorium as names were read off a screen. He was on his own time. The department didn't have a formal presence here. He'd driven hours to make it, Delta sleeping in her crate in the truck with a bone. He wore a simple suit, his badge in his pocket rather than on his belt. On the stage, Colonel Carter stood at a podium, reading names. Behind him, a projection screen showed photos. Dogs in old grainy black and white, dogs in dusty desert hues, dogs in forests and fields. Some sat at perfect heel. Some grinned around bulls. Some stayed calm and steady at the camera as if aware it was capturing a sliver of their brief, intense lives. Tess, Carter read. Scout Dog, 1969. Ranger, Scout Dog, 1970. Delta. Jake's heart lurched. Military working dog, retired, present, Carter amended with a wry smile. She's outside in the parking lot right now, chewing up my budget one tug toy at a time. Soft laughter rippled through the room. Jake smiled, the tightness in his chest easing a little. Next to him, Morgan stood with her hands clasped loosely in front of her. She'd traded camo for a dark blazer, but everything else about her was the same. Ranger made the list, she said quietly. You talked to him? Jake asked. She nodded. He called. Took him 3 tries to get past hello. We got there. He cried. I cried. We cussed out the univice together. Then he gave me every detail he could remember about Ranger. Unit, years, missions. Enough to stitch him into the record. Jake swallowed past the lump in his throat. He'll be glad, he said. The old man. That someone said his dog's name out loud in a room like this. Morgan glanced at him. His hair, she said. Jake looked around in surprise. Where? With her, she said, nodding toward the door. And with Ranger, and Tess, and all the rest. That's how it works. He considered that, then nodded. It felt true in a way that didn't need proof. On stage, Carter finished the last name and stepped aside. A bugler lifted a trumpet and played a slow, clear tune. Not full taps. This wasn't a funeral, but something like it. Notes hanging in the air like breath on a winter morning. When it ended, people began to file out quietly. Some stopped at a table near the exit to pin small tags with dog names onto a display board shaped like a paw. Jake stepped up and wrote, in neat block letters, Delta L211. He hesitated, then added, In smaller letters beneath, For Ranger. He pinned the tag near the center. Outside, the air was crisp. He inhaled deeply, feeling more present than he had in a long time. Delta greeted him with a full-body wag, tugged toy clenched in her teeth. He opened the truck door and unclipped her. "Want to see something?" he asked. She trotted at his side as they walked to the edge of the lot, where a new stone marker had been placed. It was simple, just a low granite block with an inscription about service and sacrifice, and a bronze sculpture of a dog's head, ears pricked, eyes forward. Names were etched on the back, small and precise. "If you ever wondered who you dream with," he told Delta, "they're all here. Not just the ones on stone. All of them." Delta sniffed the base of the statue, then lifted her head and stared out over the field beyond, where training ranges stretched toward the horizon. Jake stood beside her, hands in his pockets, heart oddly light. He thought about the path that had led him here. A cracked bench, a stranger with coffee and old pain, his own arrogance and slow learning, a colonel's matter-of-fact introduction, "She's Vietnam Scout dog handler," and the way those words had turned an old story into living instruction. He had dismissed the old man's advice on dogs once. He couldn't change that, but he could choose, every day, to listen now. "Come on, partner," he said to Delta. "We've got patrol tonight. People to help. Ghosts to carry." Delta leaned briefly against his leg, then trotted ahead, tail high, mission in every step. He followed, for once content to let the dog lead the way.